Imagine you are like a Peruvian shaman, and you've got 27 years of deep, really immersive experience under your belt.
Right, so you're not a beginner. You know exactly what you're doing.
Exactly. You are in the middle of a healing session, you've opened the sacred space, you've called in the spirits of the earth and the heavens, and your client is sitting right across from you.
Setting a stage, yeah.
And you're working with their breath, right? Moving energy through their lungs from left to right, entirely focused on this ancient ritual. And then suddenly you freeze.
Just completely stop.
Yeah, you look down at your own hands and you realize you are making the exact Catholic sign of the cross.
Wow.
The exact same gesture you learned as a kid and honestly never really fully understood.
And that right there is the literal inciting incident that kicked off the fascinating piece of writing we are diving into today.
It is such a crazy visual.
It really is. We're looking at a blog post and an excerpt from the upcoming book. It's called Common Threads by shaman John Rasmussen. He spent almost 3 decades mastering Peruvian shamanism, which is this ancient Andean tradition that actually predates the Inca.
Which is wild.
Yeah, but that journey led him to a completely unexpected destination, which was, a return to the Catholic Church.
And our mission today is to explore this for you, the listener. We are going to uncover how 2 spiritual paths, ones that, they look like absolute opposites on the surface.
Oh, totally different worlds.
But how they might actually be utilizing the exact same ancient human technology for healing the soul. Okay, let's unpack this inciting incident first. Because Rasmussen maps out that sign of the cross physically, and it is honestly mind-blowing.
It really is. He maps it perfectly to the body's energy centers. So when he was moving that energy, he realized he was visualizing God the Father entering through the top of the head.
Right, what Eastern traditions would call the crown chakra.
Exactly. And then he was grounding Jesus the Son down toward the earth, like through the lower chakras.
Oh, I see.
And then sweeping the Holy Spirit horizontally across the left and right lungs.
So for almost 30 years, he had been practicing cryo-shamanism, and without even realizing it, he was basically performing the central gesture of the Catholic Mass.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is how the linguistic context really validates what he was experiencing.
The language piece is super interesting.
Right. Rasmussen points out that in Aramaic, which is, the actual language Jesus spoke, the word for spirit is rucha.
Okay.
And in Hebrew, the word is neshama. And both of these ancient words, they don't just mean some spooky ghost. They literally translate to wind or breath.
Wow. Wind or breath.
Yeah, so when the shaman is working with the physical breath to move energy through a client's lungs, and the priest invokes the Holy Spirit, they are fundamentally talking about the exact same mechanical process.
That reframed everything for him, didn't it?
It totally did. Catholicism stopped being this, confusing childhood chore filled with Latin phrases that didn't make sense.
Right. Suddenly it looked like this highly refined, calibrated spiritual technology.
Mm-hmm.
Because if both traditions are using the exact same breath mechanics to move the Holy Spirit, it makes sense that they would build the exact same kind of physical machinery around the body to, amplify that breath.
Which brings us to the actual rooms they use.
Yeah, the physical architecture of these rituals.
The parallels in the physical setup are just striking. In the Karo tradition, the shaman opens a sacred space using this highly structured altar, which they call a mesa.
Which, sounds suspiciously like the Latin word missa, right? For mass.
Exactly. The mesa and the misa. Both of them serve as the sacred center of the ritual.
And even look at the practitioners themselves.
Yeah, the uniform.
The shaman wears a specific, highly symbolic poncho designed for the ritual. The Catholic priest wears specific vestments.
And the tools, too. The shaman holds sacred tools, like a rattle, a feather, special stones, and this cleansing water called agua de Florida.
Right, and each of those represents different divine forces and elements.
And then the priest utilizes sacred objects, holy water, and symbols representing Jesus and the divine hierarchy. It's the same concept.
Think about the last time you walked into a massive cathedral. You might have just seen it as, beautiful old architecture.
Sure, tourist spot.
But Rasmussen basically describes the Catholic Church as a highly engineered therapy room.
That's a great way to put it.
Think about the stained glass windows. You are literally being bathed in specific frequencies of light. It's essentially a form of light therapy designed to alter your visual cortex and, shift your psychological state.
Right. And the acoustics.
Yes, you have the specific architecture and acoustics of the stone vaulting combined with ancient chants. That is literally sound and vibrational therapy.
Stimulating the vagus nerves.
Exactly, bringing your nervous system into a state of reverence.
It is an immersive sensory environment designed from the ground up to shift human consciousness out of the mundane and into the sacred.
But okay, I have to play devil's advocate for a second here.
Go for it.
Having cool tools, a nice resonant room, and a vibrating vagus nerve that doesn't automatically heal the deep wounds of your soul.
Fair point.
Aesthetically pleasing architecture is great, but what is actually happening to you inside that room? What's the mechanism of action that creates healing?
Well, Rasmussen's synthesis of the actual mechanism is really profound.
Okay, lay it on me.
In both traditions, whether you are the client in a shamanic session or the parishioner sitting in a pew, you arrive carrying a burden.
You bring your baggage.
Exactly. You bring your painful experiences, your traumas, your mistakes, your deep regrets.
Yeah.
In the shamanic session, the client shares their story with the shaman and asks to be released from, limiting beliefs, soul contracts, or negative energies.
Which is functionally identical to the Catholic confession process, right?
Functionally, Rasmussen notes, it is identical.
You could dump in the heavy stuff.
But it is much more than just an emotional dump. Both shamans and priests understand this critical rule of, let's call it, spiritual physics.
Spiritual physics, I like that.
Guilt, shame, and self-judgment are not just bad feelings. They are the primary entry points for negative forces.
They're the cracks in your armor.
Yes. The Quero have a saying that sorcery can only get to you where you are already getting yourself.
Oh, wow. Sorcery can only get you where you are getting yourself? That is a brutal but brilliant way to frame self-sabotage.
It really is.
If you hate yourself for something you did, you are leaving the front door wide open for anything else that wants to tear you down.
And Catholic exorcists operate on this exact same principle regarding demonic forces.
Oh, this story from the text.
Yeah, Rasmussen shared a really compelling anecdote about an apprentice Catholic exorcist to illustrate this mechanism.
This story gave me literal chills. So picture an apprentice exorcist trying to perform an actual exorcism.
Right.
He is giving commands to a demon, projecting all his authority, doing everything by the book, and the demon is just completely ignoring him.
The commands are totally ineffective.
And the reason why is terrifying. The demon recognized unresolved guilt inside the apprentice exorcist.
The apprentice was compromised.
Yeah.
So he had to stop the exorcism, go to another priest, and participate in the sacrament of confession himself.
He had to clear his own baggage first.
Exactly. He confessed his sins, received absolution, which fundamentally removed the weight of his guilt. And when he returned to the exorcism,
the demon no longer recognized him.
His spiritual signature had completely changed because the guilt was gone. And suddenly, the commands worked.
Guilt isn't just a bad emotion. In spiritual physics, guilt is an open door.
And confession is just the technology used to lock it. Darkness completely loses its power when guilt is removed from the equation.
Okay, so step one of the spiritual technology is essentially clearing out the junk. You use the confession, or the shamanic story sharing, to lock the doors and kick the negative energy out.
Right.
But nature hates a vacuum. If that space inside you is completely empty now, what keeps the heavy energy from just rushing right back in? You have to fill it with something.
And that is exactly where the rituals shift from clearing away the negative to physically consuming the divine.
Consuming the divine, right.
In the Quero tradition, this filling process happens during a ceremony called the despacho. The shaman gathers specific offerings from nature: cocoa leaves, wine, llama fat, seeds.
Okay.
These physical items are arranged meticulously to symbolize the body of the divine, and they're offered up in a structured ritual.
Which mirrors the Catholic Eucharist so closely it's uncanny.
Oh, it's parallel.
The priest stands at the altar, raises the physical bread and the wine, and literally repeats the words of Jesus. Take this, all of you, and eat of it. This is my body.
Yes.
In both cases, you aren't just thinking good thoughts. You are taking the physical representation of the divine into your own human digestive system to purify and strengthen your soul from the inside out.
And the linguistics tie these two acts together beautifully again.
Let's hear it.
Rasmussen points out the literal translation of these ceremonies. So the Latin word missa, where we get mass, means to send.
Okay.
And the Quechua word despacho also translates to send. Both rituals are engineered machinery designed to send human prayers up to God and, in return, pull divine grace down into the human body.
To clear out the junk.
The ultimate goal is to clear out what the Quechua language calls hucha.
Pucha meaning sins, errors, trauma, or heavy energy.
Its literal density.
Yeah, the stuff that weighs us down, creates physical sickness, and keeps us from experiencing heaven here on Earth. But wait, I have a big question here that I'm sure some of you listening are already shouting at your speakers.
I can guess what it is.
Strict Catholics might argue that shamanism is essentially paganism.
Right, of course.
They would point straight to the first commandment, you shall have no other gods before me, and say you absolutely cannot mix a Peruvian earth ritual with Orthodox Catholicism. How does Rasmussen, as a guy who's now deeply devoted to the Catholic Church, reconcile that theological wall?
He reconciles it by defining the difference between a religion and a healing modality.
Okay, unpack that.
In Rasmussen's view, true shamanism is not a religion. It does not worship a pantheon of other gods. It worships the one creator God. But it uses the elements of nature as instruments to facilitate that connection.
So it's more like a spiritual doctor using medicine. You don't worship the scalpel.
Exactly.
You use the scalpel to heal the body.
And Rasmussen actually uses a biblical analogy for this. Think of when Jesus used mud to heal the blind man.
Right, he spat in the dirt.
Spat in the dirt, made mud, and rubbed it on the man's eyes. The mud wasn't the god. The mud was the physical instrument of divine healing.
That makes total sense.
The shaman is just a mediator and a witness utilizing the earth's elements, much like the priest utilizes water and oil.
Yeah.
And to prove that this deep reverence for nature as a conduit exists entirely within Orthodox Catholicism, Rasmussen points to St. Francis of Assisi.
The Canticle of the Sun.
Exactly. St. Francis wrote this famous, beautiful prayer praising God through Brother Sun, Sister Moon, Brother Wind, and Sister Mother Earth.
Wow, Brother Sun and Sister Moon.
That is one of the most venerated, canonized Catholic saints, using the exact same elemental familial language for nature that a Peruvian shaman uses in the Andes.
It is the recognition that the divine flows through the natural world. The world itself is a sacrament.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Okay.
If shamanism and Catholicism are functioning as the exact same technology, clearing out heavy hucha, bringing in divine light, using nature as an instrument, why did Rasmussen ultimately conclude that the Catholic Mass is the more effective and graceful approach?
That's the big question.
He still deeply values shamanism, but he leans heavily toward the church now. If they're essentially the same, why switch?
It comes down to two critical factors: danger and scale.
Danger and scale. Let's look at the danger first.
Well, both traditions take spiritual protection incredibly seriously because the unseen world is not a playground.
No, definitely not.
Rasmussen completely agrees with the Catholic Church's very strong warnings against the casual use of psychics, tarot, or mediumship by people who aren't rigorously trained.
Because if you just throw open the doors of your consciousness, you don't actually know who is knocking.
Negative entities can be highly deceptive. They don't usually show up looking like monsters.
Right.
They can appear as innocent children, as guides,
Okay.
as angels of light, or even masquerade as Jesus himself to trick you and siphon your energy.
That is terrifying.
When you open those doors without massive structured protection, you are making yourself incredibly vulnerable to spiritual parasites.
So if you are doing a solo shamanic journey, you are essentially out there in the spiritual wilderness on your own.
Pretty much.
You are relying strictly on your personal training, your own focus, and your specific guide. But Catholicism, I was thinking about this, it's like the ultimate verified spiritual LinkedIn network.
That is a hilarious but very accurate way to put it. Rasmussen highlights the sheer overwhelming scale of the Catholic spiritual network.
Yeah.
Since 1588, the Church has officially recognized over 3,000 saints through a rigorous investigative process.
Wow.
And every single one of them has been associated with verified, documented miracles.
So when you walk into a mass, you aren't just relying on the individual priest standing in front of you.
Right. He might be having a bad day, but it doesn't matter.
Rasmussen says you are tapping into a massive industrial-grade support system.
Exactly.
You have Jesus, who Catholics believe is physically, literally present in the Eucharist, acting as an anchor. You have Mother Mary, thousands of saints, legions of angels, your own guardian angel, and the entire physical congregation of believers around you.
The math of that collective power is just significant.
Yeah.
There is the ancient promise that where two or more are gathered, the presence and power are magnified.
Exponential.
Rasmussen looks at that massive accumulation of spiritual backup, the 2,000 years of structured protection, the physical presence anchoring the room, and he literally calls the Catholic Mass a shaman session on steroids.
A shaman session on steroids. I love that quote.
It perfectly sums it up. It is the exact same underlying technology of moving energy and healing the soul, but scaled up to an institutional, highly protected level where the heavy lifting is done for you.
Okay, so we've talked about the architecture of these rituals, the physics of how they clear guilt to lock out darkness, and how they pull divine energy into the physical body during our everyday lives.
Right.
But if we follow the logic of this technology, it naturally brings us to the ultimate destination.
The big transition.
Both of these traditions aren't just trying to help you feel a little less stressed on a Tuesday. They are engineered to prepare you for the biggest transition of what happens when we die.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where we pull from the excerpt of Rasmussen's upcoming book, Common Threads.
Right.
He examines how both traditions view the transition of death. And he starts by completely reframing two concepts that modern people usually find terrifying or, archaic.
Judgment and purgatory.
Exactly.
Nobody wants to talk about Judgment Day. It sounds so oppressive.
Yeah.
We usually picture a really angry judge with a gavel in a cosmic courtroom just waiting to punish us for every mistake.
But Rasmussen argues that is a total misunderstanding of the spiritual mechanics.
Oh, really?
In the deeper traditions, judgment isn't an external courtroom at all. It is simply the sudden, unavoidable unveiling of ultimate truth.
Wow.
It is absolute clarity. To stand in the presence of ultimate reality is to be forced to see yourself exactly as you are without any of your ego's excuses, illusions, or self-deceptions.
Yeah, hide anymore.
You clearly see every act of love you committed and the ripple effects of every single refusal to love.
Honestly, just having to look at your own absolute unfiltered truth sounds way harder than facing an angry judge.
It is intensely painful to see where we fell short of love, which is exactly why purgatory exists.
Okay, so how does he reframe purgatory?
Rasmussen reframes it entirely. It is not a medieval torture chamber where God makes you pay off your spiritual debts with suffering.
Which is how everyone pictures it.
Right. Instead, it is a spiritual hospital. It's a final healing process. And it is functionally identical to the shamanic concept of a life review guided by angels.
A life review? That sounds so much more compassionate.
Purgatory is just the necessary process where all your remaining trauma, the lingering heavy hucha, and anything inside you that is not pure love is gently but firmly burned away.
It clears the vessel.
Exactly, so the soul can actually handle the overwhelming intensity of full communion with the divine.
It's the final deep clean before you move in. But here's the thing. Most people, when they think of the afterlife, whether they are religious or not, they usually picture floating, transparent souls playing harps on clouds, completely detached from the physical universe.
Sure, the classic cartoon heaven.
But Rasmussen highlights a major plot twist in the Christian belief system that sets it apart from almost every other world religion, while simultaneously tying it right back to the Quero shamans.
Yes, this is arguably the most mind-bending parallel in his entire thesis.
Hit me with it.
The Christian difference is the resurrection of the body.
The body.
The ultimate endgame of Christianity is not the soul escaping the dirty physical world to go float in an ethereal heaven forever. Christianity claims that matter itself, our actual physical bodies, and the physical earth will be transformed and transfigured.
Wait, really?
Yes, as the text says, it is sown a natural body, but it is raised a spiritual body.
So neither tradition is actually trying to help us escape the physical world. They're both claiming our physical bodies are basically larvae waiting to undergo a metamorphosis.
That's a great way to look at it.
How does that specifically connect to the Peruvian shamans in the Andes?
Well, the Quero have an ancient central prophecy that matches this Christian concept of bodily resurrection perfectly.
Okay.
The Quero prophesy that humanity is currently undergoing a massive evolutionary leap. We are not just going to drop our physical bodies and float away as pure consciousness.
Right.
They believe we are evolving from Homo sapiens into what they call Homo luminous, literal beings of light.
Homo luminous. The ultimate goal in both deep Catholicism and ancient shamanism isn't an evacuation plan for the soul.
No, not at all.
The goal is for the cosmos itself and our physical biological forms to be upgraded. Matter undergoes a metamorphosis into light, transfigured and entirely filled with God. The earth actually becomes heaven.
The Christian tomb was empty, not because the physical body was thrown away as useless, but because it was taken up into a completely new mode of existence.
No.
Both the Quero and the Catholics point to a future where the physical universe and the spiritual realm are no longer separated, but completely unified in light.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, as you navigate your own life and your own spiritual baggage? We've taken a familiar, maybe even boring childhood tradition for a lot of people, the Catholic Mass.
Yeah, totally boring for a kid.
And we looked at it through the lens of a 10,000-year-old indigenous practice from the Andes. And suddenly, it reveals itself as this profound, highly calibrated technology for human healing.
It's beautiful.
It treats guilt as a mechanical open door and shuts it. It protects you from the unseen chaos of the world by plugging you into a massive network of verified saints.
LinkedIn network.
Exactly. And it literally feeds you the physical representation of the divine to prepare your body for an evolutionary leap into light. Rasmussen's ultimate point is so beautiful. The divine isn't hiding somewhere else out in the stars. It is an infinite spring. You and I are just the cups.
The cups, yeah.
And these rituals are just the highly engineered methods of placing our cup into that flow.
And it leaves you with a really profound thought to mull over long after you finish listening to this deep dive.
Oh, yeah.
It's an ancient Andean tradition developed in total isolation in the mountains of Peru. And a 2,000-year-old Middle Eastern and European church ritual have independently arrived at the exact same sophisticated mechanisms for clearing psychological baggage and healing the soul.
Right.
What does that say about the fundamental hardwired nature of reality?
It implies this isn't just arbitrary poetry we made up to feel better about dying.
Perhaps what we dismiss as the supernatural isn't supernatural at all.
What is it then?
Perhaps things like demons, grace, and transfiguration are simply fundamental laws of human psychology and spiritual physics laws as real as gravity that we just haven't developed the scientific vocabulary to fully explain yet.
Laws of spiritual physics. I absolutely love that. We want to thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it encourages you to keep questioning the invisible patterns, the architecture, and the rituals in your own life.
Thanks for listening.
And the next time you find yourself crossing your arms or taking a deep breath from left to right, maybe take a second to wonder exactly what ancient technology your hands might be remembering.